You know, I watch CNN and Fox News on a regular basis. I try to hear both sides of the aisle, and then I try to make my own decisions. And the guy we have with us on the line right now, he's a civil rights attorney, a Fox News contributor. You can check him out on Twitter at the Leo Terrell. And before we introduce him on the line, I want to play you a clash he had on the Sean Hannity show with Cornel West. There were some fireworks. I think that's fair to say. So before Leo comes on with us, I want to play this. This is Leo Terrell and Cornel West on Sean Hannity's show this week. Have a listen to this.
There's looting going on, and you try to conflate. No, it's my turn. It's my turn. You try to conflate protesting and police misconduct. And shame on you. And you're absolutely wrong. You won't address the issue. You will refuse to address the issue because I'm talking to you. You're not my brother. You're not my brother. You are hurting black people by acting this position. You are taking the wrong position. No, my brother. That stuff plays out. That plays out. Address the question. Do you? Oh, my gosh. You have lost control.
Anyway, as I invite Leo Terrell on the show, Leo, just please don't call me a dinosaur, okay? Please.
I will not call you a dinosaur. Thank you guys for having me on.
But he would probably deserve it.
What drove me crazy was the fact that there's a very fundamental issue. Do you support defunding the police? And Cornel West, been around for 40 years, had talking points. He would not answer the question. I do not favor defunding the police, and it drove me crazy, and that's what you just heard.
Yeah, understood. And by the way, for the record, neither do I. I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm not a conservative. But and by the way, can we at least give Joe Biden a little bit of credit for coming out and saying he doesn't support that as well?
I give Joe Biden a little credit. The problem is his surrogates. They will come out. The individual politicians who are seeking the second seat, the VP seat, they won't answer it. So it scares me that his surrogates won't oppose defunding the police. But I'll give Joe a little credit.
Yeah, I think it was good for him to come out and do what he did. We'll get back to Joe Biden in a moment, but I want to get your thoughts since you are a civil rights attorney and a very successful one at that. What are your thoughts on this Minneapolis cop that is just got out of jail, Thomas Lane? Of course, as you know, this is the guy who was 4 days on the job, who does have a criminal record. He was holding George Floyd down, at least holding his legs down. He's the one who said to Officer Chauvin, hey, can we pull him over to his side? And Chauvin said no a couple times. What are your thoughts on that, Leo? And what do you think about this officer now out of jail?
Well, here's the thing about it. I'm glad they were arrested. All four officers are entitled to due process. We are a nation of law. Personally, I want them convicted, but he's entitled to bail. Now, the question that I have is this. I don't want these guys to walk with an acquittal or a hung jury. I personally think they're overcharging a second-degree murder. So my biggest concern is not the bail release. Will these guys get convicted? Prosecutors don't have experience prosecuting police officers. So this is my biggest concern. These are bad cops. Everyone agrees with that. These cops should be behind bars. Everyone agrees with that.
Sure.
The problem is you don't get rid of all cops because of a few bad cops.
Oh, I agree. I completely agree with you there. I want you to respond to this. This is Minneapolis police chief, and he's asked if being a rookie matters in regards to what happened to George Floyd. Have a listen to this, and then we'll talk about it. Here it is.
When I helped craft the duty to intervene and duty to report back in 2016, it does not signify if you have 2 days on or 20 years on. We expect you to, whether it's verbally or physically, to call up for help and to intervene. Mr. Floyd, at the very least, was expecting that.
All right, Leo, what is your response to that? Do you agree or disagree with the police chief?
That sounds real good on paper, but you guys know there's a rookie, things of a veteran. When you hear the fact that this officer has been on for 4 days, that's going to play as inexperience when it's before a jury. Let's be very clear about this. He is going to throw Chauvin under the bus, the officer who knelt on George, Mr. Floyd, excuse me. And so that inexperience is going to be played up at trial, and no matter what the police commissioner says or the chief says, that will be used as a defense at trial.
And by the way, I think that's fair. I do think that's fair. I think you can't look at a cop that's been on the force for 4 days and someone else that's been there for 20 years and look at them the same with experience. So I agree with you on that one. Let's talk a little bit about Black Lives Matter, Leo, and let me give you my opinion on it, and then you can tell me if you agree or not. I believe that the majority of those in the Black Lives Matter movement are good people. They're not setting buildings on fire, they're not rioting, and they're not swearing in police officers' faces and throwing rocks at them. There are some bad actors out there, no question. Whether it's Antifa or white supremacists, I don't care what organization they're in, it's wrong. I believe the majority of these people just want equality. I believe the majority of these people want to be treated as equals when it comes to law enforcement. And listen, black-on-black crime, as you would agree, is a huge issue. No question about it. Yes, every life matters. But what I don't like are these people out there, like the Drew Brees, and I don't think Drew Brees is a racist, by the way, but the horrible timing of people out there saying white lives matter and every life matters. Black lives, most of these people in Black Lives Matter are not saying that every life doesn't matter or cop lives don't matter. They're doing this because they don't want police brutality and they want to be treated as equals. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I would agree with 100% of everything you just said. Here's my concern. And, again, people express their opinion. Drew Brees, I don't think he's a racist. I agree with everything you just said. Here's the problem that I have with Black Lives. A small caveat. There was a 77-year-old man in St. Louis who was defending a pawn shop. He was killed. He was murdered. He happened to be a retired captain, David Dorn. I didn't hear any outcry, reference, mentioning by Black lives to that black man whose life was taken away by a criminal. His life matters as well. And my point is, if you're going to have credibility as a member of Black Lives, all Black lives have to matter. And there was definitely silence regarding David Dorn.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The way that David Dorn and also David Patrick Underwood, who was also killed as a result of the protests and what turned into looting and rioting as well. But then the fact that the Black Lives Matter does not mention Chicago had its most deadly day in 60 years 3 or 4 days ago. The fact that Black Lives Matter does not mention those particular instances because to me it really doesn't push a specific narrative. Do you think that you mentioned how they lose credibility, but I think that it's also confusing to the average person in the United States when they hear Black Lives Matter and they start to think, well, do all Black lives matter to Black Lives Matter?
I agree with you. I agree. And here's the problem that Black individuals have. I don't have it because I don't care about expressing my opinion. You have Black individuals, Democrats, Republicans, those on the fence who are silent because they don't want to alienate a certain group. My comments on your show today, my comments on Hannity, I don't care. I have to express my opinion. You know why? Because Black people do not speak as one voice. There is no Black leader for Black people. So we have to have individual comments and opinions, and we have to have different opinions among Black people. That's the only way we can exist as a society and move up through society.
Yeah, understood. If you're just joining us, we're speaking with Leo Terrell, Civil Rights Attorney, Fox News contributor. Also, check him out on social media at the Leo Terrell. All right, Leo, maybe we're going to get into it here a little bit and have a good conversation. Hopefully, you don't call me a dinosaur. But let's talk a little bit about Donald Trump.
I'm almost certain he will.
Listen, I met Sean Hannity years ago in Boston at the Democratic National. He couldn't have been nicer to me. Super nice guy. But the thing that frustrates me about the Sean Hannitys of the world, the Mark Levins of the world, the Laura Ingrams, the Tucker Carlsons, they rarely ever criticize Donald Trump for anything. And here's what I'm talking about, Leo, and maybe you could, maybe we agree on this. We'll see. I think Donald Trump is a horrific human being. This has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with policy. The man went after John McCain and said he didn't respect him because he was captured. He just went after Nanci Pelosi's dentures. He demonizes people. He is thin-skinned. He is a petulant child. And make no mistake about it, when he put that Bible up there, it was a photo op, and it was ridiculous. So can you – and by the way, the whole bunker thing was a lie, too. We all know that. Barr and Trump are clearly not on the same page when it comes to lying. So I'm telling you, in my personal opinion, and based on the fact that he had unprotected sex with a porn star months after his wife had a child, this man is a bad guy. Now, nothing to do with policy or politics. I just think he's a horrible human being. Can we agree on that?
I'll question his moral character. I'll give you all those incidents. They're factually accurate. I'll question that. But you have, if you're going to call him a bad guy, there's a lot of bad guys on both sides. And you have to be honest and fair about that. There's a guy who was in the White House named Bill Clinton who has some moral credibility issues. But let me talk about Sean Hannity, if only for a second, 'cause I think it's important. Sean Hannity has been out front, and I have disagreed with Sean Hannity on 99% of issues. And that's why he was shocked that Sean and I are in total agreement. On this issue, Sean Hannity has been a leader in talking about the outrageous conduct of those 4 officers, and they should be behind bars. He hasn't wavered. He has been very, very consistent on that. And when he took that position, because he usually defends all police officers, Sean Hannity earned my respect on this issue. And that is why, after being on his show for some 20-plus years, it's really maybe the first or second time I've ever agreed with Sean Hannity. You have to give him credit for that.
Well, here's what I'll say to that. Anybody who doesn't think that Chauvin committed murder is an idiot. Am I going to give Sean Hannity credit for saying what everybody else is saying? I guess we could, just like you said, let's give Joe Biden a little credit. Okay, I'll give Sean Hannity a little credit. But with all due respect, but going back to Donald Trump, I just think there's too many people out there that think that this is the norm. And I'm not saying that reporters aren't going after him, but there's a lot of situations where reporters ask legitimate questions to Donald Trump, and he goes after them. There are moments where Donald Trump, why would he lie about going into the bunker? Why would he make a petulant lie about that when we all know he wasn't down there for an inspection? We know that. Even Barr knew that. He said it in an interview. The man lies on a consistent basis, and I think that's dangerous for the country, and it sets a really bad precedence. We can talk about moral character, but isn't this dangerous for the country when he says the media are the enemy of the people?
Let me tell you this, and I would have to disagree on you with this issue. I am a civil rights attorney. You know what I love the most? I love different opinions. You and I, we're disagreeing. We may agree on something, but we're in the court of public opinion regarding all these outrageous things that you're claiming Trump has done. And I agree. I do not dispute the factual accuracy of your comment. There's something called the ballot box in November, and I'll have to pit it right back to you. What if he gets reelected? I'm not sitting here telling you that I'm voting for Donald Trump. I will tell you as of today, I'm not voting for Joe Biden unless he shows me more. But wouldn't you agree that the laundry list of facts that you have leveled against Donald Trump, the voters will have a say-so
Absolutely.
in November?
Absolutely. I would never disagree with you on that. The way I vote is moral compass. I don't have – listen, I'll give you another example, Leo, and tell me what you think about this. Joe Biden decided to meet with the George Floyd family. He took his wife, Jill Biden. Listen, I'm not a big Joe Biden fan. I don't even know if I'm going to vote for the guy. But he showed empathy. He spoke to the family for an hour and a half. His wife offered them grief counseling. Donald Trump picks up the phone, probably because somebody in his administration told him he has to. He spoke to the family for 5 minutes. Members of the family said they barely could get a word in edgewise. The man doesn't show empathy. During the coronavirus, this is where I think it's more on – it's not just Donald Trump having no moral character. He did these coronavirus press conferences, and he's talking about the elections. He's talking about his ratings. Leo, I just think that's bad for the country. Now, you're absolutely right with everything you said. I would never doubt. Listen, he could win in November. It's very possible. He has some support. I don't doubt that one bit. I'm just saying.
We're going to have a Cornel West moment right now because I totally disagree with you on Biden right now because Biden has done nothing for blacks. Let me give you 2 examples. A couple of weeks ago, Joe Biden said, if you vote Republican, you ain't black. That insults every African American in this country.
He apologized.
And that's one of the
Leo, with all due respect.
Finish my point.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me finish my point. And then he goes up and says, this is when Obama was running. Oh, Obama's mainstream. He's articulate. He's clean. What gives Joe Biden the right to evaluate the cleanliness of African Americans? What about Tim Scott, a very good Republican? Oh, he's not clean. He's not articulate. That came out of the mouth of Joe Biden. It's pandering and it's insulting.
You're right. And you know what? I disagree with what he did, but here's the difference again between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Joe Biden apologized. Joe Biden said he was wrong, and he apologized for those statements. Can you name me a time in the last 3 years of all the horrific things that Donald Trump has said about people where he's ever apologized and owned up to anything?
If that's the measuring stick that you need, the apology, the question I would submit to you is that apology sincere? Did someone get into Joe Biden's ear and say, you made a mistake? He didn't even know he made a mistake. That's the most dangerous type of person, when you don't even know you're clueless. And that's what Joe Biden said 2 weeks ago. That's how he characterized Obama. He was told to apologize.
All right, so the argument is you don't know if he's sincere or not, but I would counter to that. Okay, fair enough, but I would counter to that and say when Donald Trump talks about African Americans, when Donald Trump talks about minorities, when Donald Trump used George Floyd's name and said George Floyd was talking from the heavens to gloat about the last jobs report, do you think Donald Trump was being genuine?
I will tell you right now, Donald Trump was using Floyd as a prop, as a political prop. I grant you that. And all I can say is you and I are right now in the same boat. We got a choice in November. We don't know who we're going to vote for. And I'm sitting here telling you the voters will have a chance to decide Donald Trump or Biden. But let me be clear. The last thing I would want to do is vote for Biden because I don't like Trump. I want Joe Biden to articulate. I want him to come out of that bunker. I want him to come up and tell me why I should vote for him. And please don't say it's because Donald Trump is bad.
You know, speaking of pandering, Brian mentioned how Donald Trump did the photo op with the Bible. Actually, Nanci Pelosi and Chuck Schumer put on Kenta and they kneeled for 8 minutes and 40 seconds a couple of days ago. Brian's never mentioned that on the show. He probably never will. But what are your thoughts on that, Leo?
Thank you for asking that. Okay, and I have some credibility. I'm a black man. You saw Nanci Pelosi and company put on African-American garb and try to kneel for 8.5 minutes.
I thought it was
As
a tallis.
African-American. I was insulted. It was embarrassing. It was a photo prop, so-called Trump in the Bible, and it did not sway me to vote for them because they put on a garb.
I agree.
And that, to me, that's the type of pandering that politicians, a lot of Democrats, they expect us to vote in unison. And that's wrong. Let me just add one other point, slightly digressing. Al Sharpton is not the national preacher for black people.
Agree.
Al Sharpton used the George Floyd Memorial as a political tool for the Democratic Party and Joe Biden. Al Sharpton had no right to criticize the president at a funeral.
I agree. Look, Leo, we did an hour on that the other day. Al Sharpton is a racist. He's an anti-Semite. He's a disgrace.
Yes.
I could not agree with you more. Okay, and by the way, what you said about Nanci Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, I agree with you. But here's the one difference.
Talk about that as equally as you talk about Trump. All right. As a civil rights attorney, I want to be fair. So both sides, to me, are horrible.
I agree, but here's the one difference that I will say. When it came to Donald Trump, there were protesters out there who were protesting peacefully. You have to admit that the way they cleared out those protesters, peaceful protesters during the day, was inappropriate. I agree with you that what Chuck Schumer and Nanci Pelosi did was completely ridiculous, pandering, and inappropriate. But last I checked, when they put those stupid things on, what they did is they did not push out thousands of protesters. Can you at least give me that?
I'll give you the fact that they were both wrong. I will not give you the fact that one is worse than the other. That's an individual choice. Every one of your listeners have to make a decision. Who is the best person to vote for, notwithstanding each side's flaws? I won't tell you one is worse than the other.
Fair enough. A few more quick questions for you. If you're just joining us, it's Leo Terrell, nice enough to join us. I'm a big fan of his. He does a great job as a civil rights attorney and a Fox News contributor. Also, check him out on Twitter, @the Terrell.
No, Leo, do you think that the character of obviously George Floyd should not have died? Derek Chauvin was charged with murder for a reason, and that was a heinous situation. And the fact that the Minneapolis Police Department was the only police department in the country that allowed the knee to neck restraint, that's crazy too. But do you think that George Floyd, the person, is not being publicized enough, and his death is being used to divide the country more than it already was, as well as as an indictment against police officers on a national level?
Oh, there's no question about it. Let's be clear. Let's be clear about how things have been conflated. The murder of George Floyd is wrong, 100%. Everyone agrees those officers should be behind bars. But you can't tell me that this death has been used by certain people. I don't want to mention any names. Al Sharpton, that is used as a political tool to win the election. There's no nexus, and they have propped George Floyd up. Al Sharpton, Benjamin Crump wants to be Johnny Cochran. They have propped him up and used as a pretext to raise every other issue. This whole defunding of the police is ridiculous. Why? In Los Angeles, in Baltimore, in Washington, D.C., They're run by minorities. All of a sudden, now we got systematic discrimination. L.A. had 2 black police chiefs. How in the world can you have systematic discrimination when black people and minorities are running the system? All that as a result of the George Floyd death. Wrong. It's wrong, and I won't be part of this.
Okay, but let me ask you this, though. Would you agree that there is racism in society? I think we all could agree on that. But when it comes to police brutality, can you look me in the eye and tell me that if George Floyd was white, that same thing would have happened?
I can't tell you it would have happened, and I agree with you. There's racism, but that is where the agreement will stop because, again, as a result of George Floyd, a black man being killed, all of a sudden, minority cities with black police chiefs are systematic discrimination. They want you to believe right now that we're back in 1960, Bull Connor, the dogs, and then we're in Alabama. We don't have that. I wouldn't be on this radio right now as an educated African-American who went to law school, got a master's degree. I'm a school teacher. You cannot tell me the issues today are the same as in 1960.
I wouldn't say that.
Cornel West would say that.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. But what I would say is that there's still racism out there within police. And I can tell you, I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen African-Americans pulled over for no reason. I've seen African-Americans being followed in stores. And some of these people that I know are very educated. So while I agree with you that we're not in the 1960s, we've come a long way since then. I think it's still sad that, for example, NASCAR today has to say Confederate flags are no longer allowed. Well, why didn't they do it 10 or 20 years ago? So I think there are still really some horrible people out there, a small minority of police officers, but they're still out there. We need to get them off the streets.
I agree with you. You got no argument there. As a police, I've sued the police department for killing black people for the last 20 years. So I agree with everything you just said. It's just that the original question was, have this George Floyd death been manipulated by politicians? Yes. Right. And so we need to narrow it down and limit the scope.
No question. Well, Leo, listen, I'm a big fan of yours. I think we agree more than we disagree, actually, on a lot of issues. Surprisingly, and he didn't call me a dinosaur, so I'm very happy.
Oh, he wanted to.
We were going to have a Cornel West moment.
Listen, Cornell just went Looney Tunes on you there. That was very unprofessional. But no, Leo, I've always, even though we haven't agreed on everything, I've always appreciated your passion. You wear your heart on your sleeve. I think we need more people like you because, number one, I think it's very entertaining. I think you're a very entertaining guy, very articulate.
Extremely knowledgeable.
Yeah, and very intelligent. So, Leo, I hope we could have this conversation again down the road. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for your time.
Guys, feel free to call me again. Thank you. I've enjoyed it. And let me be honest, I'm not stroking your ego. You guys asked some very good questions, and so I had to make sure I was ready to fire back. Very good interview. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Leo.
Thanks a lot,
that
Leo.
means a lot. Thank you so much. That's Leo Terrell, Civil Rights Attorney, Fox News contributor at the Leo Terrell is on Twitter. That's a nice compliment because certainly he's interviewed by a lot of different people.
Do you think he thinks that you guys are better than Hannity?
Boy, I should have asked him that. Damn it!
I'll send him a follow-up. I'll send him a follow-up and ask him.
You know, our show is much different than Sean Hannity's show.
I should have asked him
now
that. That would have been a great promo.
You could have asked him. Did he ever go on a Hannity and Combs? You think?
Years ago, that was a long time ago.
Now you could ask him if our show was better than Hannity and Combs.
There you go.
But not Hannity.
I'll have him tweet that. By the way, I did get a follow from Leo Terrell on Twitter. I'm very proud of that. You know what? I'm telling you, we agreed more than we disagree, and that's what I appreciate about having people like that on the show. A lot of fun.